well that it is relevant. The topic given to me was Gateway to Legal Research. So I thought I will bring some new ideas, which it is same truth we view from different angles, but some new ideas which we gathered at the Global Conference of Law Deans in Thailand. So there we had deans from all over the world, and they were deliberating on 21st century has already finished one quarter because we are in 2025. So how is 21st century going to unfold? Maybe some of us may not see the half or another quarter of 21st century, or maybe the other two quarters, but some of you will be very young and witnessing it maybe as mature academics. So how do we look at our legal research responding to such a complex and changing dynamic future, and where do we connect our legal teaching, research and academic writing in this context is going to be my address, because this is a kind of inaugural address and this is supposed to synthesize all the themes of the day. I thought I will present it in terms of giving a content and a context. The context becomes the content if you are responding as a researcher to the reality. So the scheme is like this. In the beginning, we introduce some of the ideas or development and what are the current trends which are coming up, emerging in legal education and research, and what are the challenges and what have been some of the approaches to respond or address these challenges, and what could be the inspiration taken for research and publication from this point of view. So I will be touching upon some of the facets of research for some of you who are very new to legal research or just navigating, beginning to navigate, and then we summarize. So, what are the emerging trends? What is your view and experience? If there is a chat line available, it will be great to hear from you, because with this Zoom, it should be easy for you. And what are the predictions? Some of the predictions which show about emerging trends concentrate around geopolitics. All of you are aware the way India is standing up to US, and not without a cost, though. A lot of cost paid in terms of employment, in terms of family unsettling, which is invisible impact, and how BRICS nations are coming together to form a cartel, and how America is trying to divide them by giving, differential tariffs, among other things. Other diplomatic games being conducted by America or through American allies. There are many allies to America as well. So this is one issue. So the shifting sands of international politics, how that is going to shape the international law and impact the domestic law thereby. What will happen to our visa policies, or what will happen to our trade policies? How will government look at supporting those trades which are exclusively export dependent? Like, for example, they said that 20,000 crores loss on shrimp exporters from Andhra Pradesh. So some such examples show how our domestic economy, thereby domestic socio-economic stability, are dependent on international policies and international behavior. Whether legal researchers must respond to it. Long ago, tea business, when it was getting affected, there were studies conducted by NUJS and others on export promotion and tea. One of the studies we conducted in the wake of geographical indication was on export promotion in case of Assam's Muga silk. How the GI was supposed to protect the knowledge, but how traders are not letting the benefits flow to the grassroots. So legal research from this point of view will be very interesting. It will have interesting challenges in future if researchers are open to. The second challenge, all of us know, big data. Big data analytics, even challenging the foundation of democracy. We have the Cambridge Analytica case, we have other developments. Aside from that, any campaign affecting the stability of the nation, whether it is hate campaign, because of the Google's passive way of speaking of being an intermediary and allowing all kinds of materials on Google, or Facebook's pleading of neutrality, or Twitter's or X's pleading of neutrality, how the big data companies are going to be questioned. And already we had a ramification yesterday in Karnataka. They spoke about taking, the judges spoke about taking the Twitter campaign seriously and taking action on that campaign, blocking such messages, because the big data companies and their activities are affecting the political stability, social stability of some of the countries. So we had a very interesting experience which one of our PhD researchers brought. She was writing on the constitutional position of social media, constitutional framework. For the first time, somebody was reflecting it from the constitution point of view. She got her PhD in 2020. She got a very interesting case study from the field, that there is a group called Pune Ladies Association, which started with some 100 ladies, and today it is 20,000 ladies, and it's becoming lakh soon. And in this, one lady with a lot of enthusiasm put the photo and details of her domestic servant whom she wanted to settle well. So she wanted to find a boy. And this, somehow the engines picked up on this, and the girls started getting all kinds of bad messages to continue with. So this showed that those who are using the social media have to be very mindful of something like privacy, etc. Of course, now also India has not consolidated its privacy regime, data privacy regime, and liability, and even advanced technology such as AI being regulated is far from ethical framework in terms of accountability, penal liability of manufacturers or users of AI. So this is second issue. Third issue is the very idea of rule of law. How is rule of law being conceived? How is rule of law being implemented? For example, we all countries who are post-colonial country located in the south, we have a very low rule of law index. The index has been developed by World Bank. We have very low gender equality index. We have a very low human safety index. We have low HDI index. So this is one trend of global inequality which is there. We can't be indifferent to it. One of the famous speakers there said that the way in which inequality between nations exists, whereas inequality within nations is being addressed, criminality between nations exists, and criminality within nations is addressed. For example, cyber law and cyber crimes are criminality which cut across nations. They are transnational. Whereas criminality within nations in terms of physical violence, etc., are addressed by the police. When it is transnational, it is very difficult to address. So this is where rule of law's response to these developments, how rule of law society has to come about, or how rule of law has to address these issues. This is something that we need to look at. Now, other than that, research support for the future, how legal research and law can address. So a lot of scope for analytical research, a lot of scope for impact analysis, a lot of scope for law reform research, and quality research in terms of being original, studying the feasibility for a new law, or in terms of clarity required in the law is something that is needed for the future. So here IP innovation, you know that any economy which is driven by innovation has been the advanced economy. Any economy which has protected the intellectual property of the labor of the intellect has been an advanced economy. Look at post-war Japan, it's a reconstruction, or advancement of United States of America, or advancement of Korea for that matter, or China's own predominance. If you correlate the developed economy and its IPR regime, there is a very neat correlation. The more the IP, the more developed the economy is. So innovation drives the development of the economy. It's not that inherently Americans are very bright, but they invite bright people from India and other places, and they have made it the home for them. And because of this, they have taken advantage. Large percentage of NASA scientists from India or Pakistan. So bright people from the Asian subcontinent have been driving the innovation economy, whereas they have not been protected or addressed or encouraged by the laws, regulations, and policies of their home country. Not a good lab is built. Yesterday, I was reading an article where an intellectual is talking about how this H1B people can be treated with that fairness in terms of going from having good labs, having good policies, and also protection, a place to come back to. If they are refused H1B, they don't come back to India. They rather search other countries. Why? What is wrong with India? So this is where legal research needs to be more and more oriented. And then what kind of future? I already told you, supporting the youth, because today youth advantage is there in India 2030. Maybe it will fizzle out by 2035. And then the nations which are going to be strong in this context are African nations. So what kind of relationship between a big country like us and Africa are there? I was told that China is lending money and it is tightening its control on Africa. So this is where India needs to be more and more pro-Africa. So what kind of global laws are there? What is their legitimacy? What is their authority? Today, if tariffs are being indiscreetly handled by Donald Trump, what is the legitimacy of his action? What is the authority? What is law doing at the international level for this? So, future of legal research should be looking at impact of globalization. As I told you already, look at the case of prawn pisciculture farmers in Andhra Pradesh, or if it is looking at international law, should they divert their market to Southeast Asia? I was told most of the Mangalorean pisciculture people mostly look at Southeast Asia. So their market is unaffected. Their factories are running, and here thousands of people will go unemployed. So this is the kind of legal research that needs to be encouraged. Has any one of you tried AI usage? Has any one of you done bibliometric research? What we traditionally called literature review, in terms of the research which came before your research, we always looked at keywords and then we went to the library manually, we took out the catalogs and then we took the essence and then we wrote the author and the book name and the page numbers and we put them together saying this is the position of knowledge as on today, these are the gaps, hence the research has to address these gaps, hence my research is addressing these gaps. Today it has been made easy. We have certain softwares using which you can create a list of literature, then you can categorize them into which region they are reporting mostly. Then you can go into the qualitative dimension of that article dealing with certain things, not dealing with certain things. Where is the majority of article coming from? Which are the issues they're addressing? For example, we did it on disaster management laws. So we saw that most of the research came from southern global south, naturally, because they are most disaster hit and BBC loves to talk about them and their disasters and how many died and how mismanagement of governance is, etc., etc. But the proportion of disaster is quite difficult. So how many researchers have responded to this is what you come to know by bibliometric research. So we have tools whereby they capture from one particular database. We can give the years in which we want to locate them. And once we have all the work, then we look at which authors are predominant authors, which is the latest trend that is emerging, which region of the world is looking at. So our idea was to look at the research gap in terms of any law domestically addressing this and any law or any policy which is specifically addressing gender and human rights. To our dismay, we found virtually zero. Nobody addressed human trafficking issue as a human rights issue there. Human trafficking per se was not addressed. It was addressed in refugee context, migration context, but not in disaster context. In fact, Chandni Bar, this film which was very famous about Bombay dance girls, we did a kind of correlational study afterwards and we came to know that majority of these girls came from the communal right hit Uttar Pradesh areas. So disaster, human trafficking and gender exploitation have a neat correlation, human-made disaster and then our study showed in Calcutta and in Bundelkhand. In Bundelkhand, it was natural disaster in terms of drought and famine. In Calcutta, in West Bengal, it was a cyclone and rain hit areas. So both these natural disasters resulted in young girls being trafficked to the red light areas. So this is, and the red light area people don't remain in one place. The racketeers keep shifting them. So this is what we proved by bibliometric research that specific categories, or we call them as constructs, which you call them as keywords, which we were investigating, didn't have much of a literature support. So that establishes the gap. Another tool that is AI tool called R Discovery. R Discovery has a database of thousands of articles and about 5,000 different citation related materials are there in R Discovery. There is a trial version available on Google. Google has Gemini and others also, but they have their risk as well. But R Discovery is purely into research, so you can download that app on payment basis from the Play Store, or you can use it on a trial basis and check your keyword. You will get lot of materials. You can really, we call it as sharpen your focus in your topic that you have taken for research. So this is one point. And then second is, what are the types of articles which are there? And then third is, how do you structure your research, your data discussion, and then what is the publishing process and the summary that we are going to talk about. Now, the first question that we will address here is, how is legal research now? Now, legal research is predominantly black letter law research, which is not wrong, which is looking at law as it is. But there are two ways of doing it. In Economic and Political Weekly, which is a Scopus 3 journal, you should read it every week. It's a weekly. And every week or once a month, they bring a discussion on the new law which has been passed. Now, this discussion is by scholars only, people like you or I. So we usually, when the new law is brought, we may just do anatomy, means we will say this law consists of this, consists of this, consists of this. But do we do critical writing on that? Some authors do, like Levi Agnes. She does critical writing in legislations or case laws related to women, and she brings the feminist jurisprudence perspective. So, looking at one plane, standing on one plane and looking at these developments can become a very good research, but then that goes beyond black letter law. It is not just telling when it was adopted, whether parliament adopted, assembly adopted, what was the preamble saying, what are the different structures, and what is the authority that is coming there, what is the budgetary provision, what is the way of revision of this legislation. So that is black letter law. Or when you're doing case analysis also, what is the judge IRAC analysis? Plain IRAC analysis is black letter law. But when you go beyond that and you see future implication, impact analysis, linkage to the march of law till then and in future, then it becomes little more than that. Still it is doctrinal because you are relying on library material. On the other hand, if you are analyzing it from the perspective of sociology, or from the perspective of history, or economic analysis of law, which Richard Posner and others developed as a tool, or if you are looking at it from the historical analysis, it becomes interdisciplinary. This is the most emerging branch of law. Interdisciplinary, and interdisciplinary can be any discipline. It's not that we never did interdisciplinary. In the past, most of the research, like Roscoe and others said, law is the social engineer. So that lawyer is the social engineer, law plays the role of social engineering. What is the correlation between law and social change? We were embarking on interdisciplinary research. Or if we were looking at the historical roots of Hindu law, we were doing interdisciplinary research. Tools are different, framework is different, design is different, approach is different. Now, one of the most important interdisciplinary approaches is the empirical research. In empirical research, we can do two ways. From the beginning itself, it is empirical, or it can be empirical component introduced to test your conclusion from doctrinal research. So there it is multiple method research, or we call it as combined methodology in the research. So future is more and more for empirical, because unlike looking at black letter law as sacrosanct, where it was top-down kind of approach, today more and more democratic awareness requires that there is a participatory lawmaking. We expect our parliamentarians to represent us in the parliament and engage in legislating or in the assembly. But when they are not that effective, then the correlation between law and reality becomes difficult. And then the court tries to resolve it. But court has its limitation. It can only give a wider interpretation. It can't make the law. So finally, the power of questioning this law and altering the equation lies with who? With the people in the constitution also. Therefore, empirical research, in terms of gathering opinions and suggesting reforms or suggesting alterations or showing how it can be effective with other agencies like NGOs and media can come in, becomes most important. And it is by empirically validating through the stakeholders. So the stakeholders need not be only litigants. They can be everybody in the community who are potential litigants. They can be lawyers. They can be judges. Sitting judges don't respond so critically. Retired judges can come in there. Policy makers can come in there. Bureaucrats can come in there. NGOs who use the law to change the society can come in there. So this is a stakeholder verification of your given research topic with at least 400 respondents in case of PhD, or at least a sample of 100 respondents for LLM, really puts your research on an original research footing. You know, that is where publication is guaranteed, because publication doesn't look for review alone. When we do doctoral research, it amounts to review. Whereas when you put an empirical component, it becomes raw data. It becomes fundamental research. So in law, by using the scientific technique, which the social science research methodology has already given to us through Pauline V. Young and subsequent Good and Hatt and other researchers, and now with the empirical tools which are coming from economics and social sciences, can be interpreted and applied to the law as well. I am sure today when you have these separate sessions, it will be enlightened to you. Now for me, the job is to show how legal research can respond to these emerging areas. For example, you just look at the left side and right side. The left side is big data. I gave you that problem. Within big data, we have cyber crimes, we have artificial intelligence. Let's stop till here. So the approach is your legal research questions can, center around who controls the technology, whose rights, what are the justice issues here? How do you address the phenomenon like hate speech, or a development like Cambridge Analytica or Panama Papers, where there is money laundering issues? Cambridge Analytica is about democratic public opinion, manipulation through technology, regulation of technology, of various stakeholders involved in technology, those who are affected, those who are creating, data privacy, ethics, and we have this important right because digital space is considered as virtual alternative to public square. In public square, if people are debating issues and if they fight, we have protocols. Even Parliament has its own protocols. I was reading a very good research from NUJS on parliamentary conventions, constitutional conventions. Now, is it there in the internet? But internet does engage in debate. So who regulates them? We simply follow it. We simply write our opinions without thinking of consequence, And we are very courageous there because we don't need to be seen, But it can be tracked easily, which people forget. And as young students or young researchers, if you open up your mind and leave your footprints or trails there, when you are going to be employed, the employer before investing will look at it and it can go against you. So that is one thing that ethically people will have to be very careful before revealing the data. And we all have a right not to use the social media. This is called right to remain obscure, which is part of the privacy, which is part of the autonomy, individual autonomy and dignity. And then comes the right to be forgotten. Very, very important. Once it is there online, it's forever there. And this can result in trauma for future. Like, for example, in France, we had a very interesting instance. You might have read about Charlie Hebdo. Charlie Hebdo, as they say, the French. It was the fully cartoon-based newspaper. And one fine day, a gunman comes and shoots all the editors at the editorial table. So the whole team is finished. The idea team is finished. So as a nation, French stood up to this. And next day, the issue was published with the same format, in the same way it was circulated. There was a huge protest in the nation. But for days, Google started beaming the news about pro-opinion, contra-opinion, investigative opinion. They said you should block this. European Union passed a judgment saying that this is contrary to the right to be forgotten, because as the national trauma, they don't want to revisit the trauma again and again. Something similar happens in Karnataka. I'm seeing a rape victim is there. Her photo is beamed as if she is a model or something. I mean, she has undergone a heinous rape and she's no more in the world. And then the right to dignity and right to privacy of that victim is not at all considered by the media also, or social media, YouTubers and all other media as well. So right to be forgotten is one thing, digital public square is another. There are many concepts which are emerging in this field, so please look at it. In case of cybercrime, international consensus. What is the position today? 2016, my colleague Dr. Shelke pointed out how there is a need for that, and regulating and protecting and preventing other criminal law research, criminal law jurisprudence, if it is applied to cybercrimes, which are emerging in new ways. There's a ransom crime, which is like they catch hold of your data and then they can hold you at ransom, and they may say that you give this much, then we will release. Because nowadays all our organizations will shut if our cyber security is compromised. Similarly, there are blackouts, digital arrests. Have you come across any research on digital arrest, legal research? Frequently, this is reported and awareness is not generated. So digital arrests are very important, especially with the techno non-savvy generation, elderly, and also techno illiterate generation, which might be people who don't have access and understanding of technology. Fraud forensics within the corporate fraud, which KPMG and others are certifying for, or fraud forensics in the other contexts also. Third is artificial intelligence, the accessible, affordable, and transparent, reasonable kind of framework for regulating the ART framework for artificial intelligence, which is also articulated by European Union and Niti Aayog of India, but the legislation has come from European Union called AI Act. The black box nature of the AI commands and the audits which are not conducted before releasing them to public. Every kind of AI is available. When we went on our research to the field, to the hospitals, X is saying this kind of AI I am using, Y is saying this kind of. Some are using for diagnosis, some are using for surgery, some are using for documentation of patient records. So what is the risk involved here? What is the affordability? What kind of regulations exist? There has to be a tick box or regulatory sandbox. So are they present in very important areas of human good like health or education or other areas such as justice dispensation? These could be good legal questions. For future, medtech ethics and law are also going to be very important. Some of the issues like genetics and law, research ethics, I do a lot of lectures on that, health law, medical technology related law or medical related technology, imaging, bioengineering, surrogacy, living will, these are all the areas. Equality and justice, we know that in the international context, in the national context, the very idea of family when they migrate, or within the country also when they migrate, fluidity of the family with LGBT rights coming in, co-creating and recreating families. I was writing once about made to order babies with the doctor. It was on a baby, it was about the possibility of a baby who is created by the fusion of two sperms or eggs and the third party donates. Like for example, in case of gay or lesbian couple, both are same sex couples. So their genetic material is fused and the opposite sex's gamete is brought by artificial reproductive technology. So this is one. So such future developments which may come, other kinds of vulnerabilities in case of crimes, arbitration and ADR, the way in which contract clauses are interpreted in bilateral investment treaties, the global contracts in multinational context. We can make a series of these over the years or the types of contracts, and we can study in a PhD. Actually, the best research is the one which looks at, which brings problems from the practical field, from the industry or from the live project, and then finds answers or solutions. So that's why we say when we are assessing your research proposal, whether in the project or PhD, what is the need and what is new in your research? What are you trying to investigate? And what do you think is the usefulness or utility of the research? Because these are all quality questions that we ask. So all of you, before embarking on research, please ask these questions. In addition to these key differentiators in terms of emerging or shaping the future kind of research, we have the most important research theme on which our very survival depends, climate justice or sustainability. So what is the sustainability framework here? So one of the framework came from European Union, which talked about Green Deal, and they also have a sustainability framework. Conference of Parties of United Nations, especially with the Prime Minister spoke about Amrit Points or Amrit Bindu, and then adaptation and mitigation to climate change, carbon sinks, even techniques of carbon credits, energy, alternative fuels. How do we look at sustainable development goals in mapping it to our research? Every research in law, earlier we looked at in terms of comparative research, Indian practice, and then historical development, and then our recommendations. I would say add one more point, SDG. Which SDG? There is nothing that is not mapped to SDG. Which SDG are you mapping your research topic to? So there is a lot of research to come, which is needed to come in energy, in agriculture, in resources in the dynamic context, mitigation and adaptation, disasters. Not much research we have. So our interface between climate justice and corporate, which is the sustainability framework, between international investment and that, climate justice in terms of human rights or philosophies and lifestyles. So how law can address this or how law has not addressed this? These could be the good topics. And other than that, some of the challenges into law and justice in globalizing context like global poverty, SDG, I spoke to you about, business, the governance side and the global side, innovation and IPR, indigenous knowledge. See, there are, on the one hand, we talk about sustainability and climate justice. On the other hand, there have been problems. We were studying about a tribal community in Tamil Nadu, in the Palghat area, who have their own indigenous knowledge whereby they are doing this kind of alternative cropping, whereby water utilization is minimized. And because of that, the water reservoirs in the area showed the water table came up and the pollution came down, livelihood of the people improved. Now, this whole technique, they did not bring it from the agricultural college or from scientists. It was their own traditional technique. We have something similar in Maharashtra as well. There are many varieties of rice which are disappearing, which need to be documented. Some NGOs did this job, but we stopped. I mean, once the funding is not there, they don't do. Now, here in law learning and law teaching, you could look at case study based transnational curriculum development. For example, if I'm studying carbon credits, I can team up with a few universities who can tell about their country situation, their student projects, and our student projects can connect. We developed a curriculum where Dr. Subramania was involved, where we had 3 Asian countries with 6 universities, 2 from India, 2 from Vietnam, 2 from Malaysia. And we had 2 European players whose best practices we brought in and developed a master's curriculum. Some of those courses are open to undergraduates for a choice-based credit. So this is how you can develop in future the whole law learning and researching. Just quick glance to what is a possible way of doing legal research as a gateway. We created Symbiosis Center for Advanced Research and Legal Studies and Advanced Legal Studies and Research, where we consolidated LLM and PhD research here. And other than that, where we indulge in theory building or theory learning, then we look at praxis in terms of what I said, empirical things coming up, then action, which is our legal aid and other intervention, including the clinical learning or clinical work, and then interventions that we make by legal aid or in outreach, going beyond the law school in stretching to the community. And then we have interdisciplinary linkages. This is just an idea to give you. So we link with the Symbiosis Center for Image Analysis, where all that medtech law dimension comes in. With the community, we look at Urban Studies Center, looking at law and justice reform. With the Symbiosis Center for Biological Studies, we are looking at ideas such as even child rights and other things. And synergy in terms of higher education center, we look at 21st century skills. So all the schools and education approaches in faculty development, etc., will be connecting to this. We had the Jamoni chair, which we continue in terms of our courses, etc., which connected to so many centers on climate justice. So this is how you can synergize, and these are the possibilities. These are some of the projects that we handled, because for research, one is conceptualization and aligning it with all your courses and student papers and other things. And then how various projects you can apply. And these are researchers where we had big money from Europe coming in. Now the one which is live, rest most of them, we almost all got completed. Only a small portion of SDG. This is an action research which is still going on between India, Nepal, and Germany. But the other one, Spark, is a huge 1 crore grant where we are looking at artificial intelligence and patient safety in terms of legal and ethical compliances. Look at the deliverable. This is point number 7. 6 research papers in Scopus, 2 case studies, one field study where we visited about 10 hospitals and had interviews, focus group discussions with law, engineering, and medical experts. We developed a curriculum. We developed a training module as part of that curriculum, which could also be the curriculum as a course for postgraduates. Workshops and monograph we are bringing under this, collecting articles and approaches, also some of the findings of the research, and visits of international faculty and scholars here from Milan and Sweden, and then visits of our 2 research scholars to Sweden, and then they visit Milan. Now, in terms of quality publication, we have achieved Scopus publication. How did we achieve that? The mining for publication happened from PhD thesis. It happened from LLM dissertation. Some of the best student presentations in their term papers with the original questions or having empirical points, we brought in, we upgraded it and took expert advice and put up for publication. This is how our Scopus criteria have increased, and global publications are also there. Now, one point is, why should you publish? Now, coming to the second part of our discussion, why should you publish? So you publish for your own research visibility. You can use AI tools and increase your publication. One work for LLM or PhD can yield at least 4 articles. And then you don't exist in the scholarly world until you publish. Publishing is very, very important. Conference is a form of publication which Scopus, which NAC recognizes, but nothing like publishing in a standard publisher's publication, either book chapter, or it can be conference paper proceeding reported, or it can be a journal article. So what are the strategies and steps? What are the types of publication? We have essays, research papers, literature review papers, research proposals. Like when we got the grant, we had a certain way of writing the proposal. More or less, all proposals have 4 or 5 points: title, objective, then the methodology that you are going to use, sampling technique, and then if it is combination of doctrinal and non-doctrinal, why that sampling technique was used. And then you gather the data analysis, and then you report, which is in the form of either dissertation, thesis, or research report. And for everything, latest references are very important. And these references have to be strategically picked up. One is most published author, most cited author in that area should not be left. Another smart way is most published, most cited author being linked to your research. If not remotely linked, directly linked. Second, most cited or most published book or journal to be connected, and most recent one to be connected. These will always place your research in a scholarly community. And another thing that you have to remember is always pick a problem, as I told you, which is relevant, which is ticking, which is contemporary. Then your research will never be outdated. Second, always connect it to what we call as evergreen areas. What are the evergreen areas? Constitution is evergreen, international law is evergreen, human rights is evergreen. So smartly link them. Now, while writing also, redundant words have to be avoided. Many a times when I evaluate these paras are sloppy, connect one para to the other means you have to think and you have to link. When you are copy pasting, it may not happen. Therefore, always rethink, rewrite 4 or 5 types of drafts you look at. Now, one little insight from my experience and how we do here. is to be looked at. So what is the difference between a thesis or an essay or a dissertation and a journal article? First is in what we write for college in terms of your term paper or your own students, some of your professors, own students writing it. They're writing it for the marks and you have a rubric of evaluation. Now you have to shift your thinking to look at writing it for the journal. That journal, for example, EPW. What are the ways in which other authors are writing? What is the word limit? They even accept letters and opinions of 100 words, 200 words. That means first only you can't write a good 100-word piece. You write a long piece and then you truncate, pressy writing. So meeting that journalistic standard, and here our academic writing is by our teacher or maybe co-teacher, whereas there it is blind reviews. They don't even know you. So you show, when you write, it should show, not just collecting information. Here information is enough, there it is not. There is a style with which you write more effectively. Here we have chapters in thesis or dissertation. Here we have sections. And then here it is maybe 80,000 words, 20,000 words. Here it may be anything between 500, 1,000 to 6,000 words. Table of contents is there. Here there is a format of the manuscript. Lengthy research of literature. Here succinct research of literature. Here you may be expected 30 to 100. Whereas here you cannot cite more than 5 or 6. So be smart. I told you, latest, best author, and top class journal. And research review board approval described in detail, whereas they say correct this, correct that, or overall what are the changes you have to make. Description and copies of tools used, you do that, whereas here you just have to give the succinct information. All findings are presented in thesis. Here you have to do selected finding, and verb tenses are fairly consistent. So journal, when you convert your research into journal article, whether on the basis of literature review, on the basis of data analysis, or beginning one question you take and data related to that you present, and then you do your conclusion with recommendation. Please see this transition from one to the other. Now, restructuring your term papers, restructuring your assignment papers can provide you a big factory of articles. And once you finish, writing the abstract is important, writing the introduction is important, having a very precise, catchy title, attractive, creative, which the reader should be interested in. For example, I had a student from Bangalore, Riji Joshi. Today she is working in a lead law firm in the UK after her LLM in Cambridge. She brought me her whole argument in moot court, which she won in a moot court competition. So we brought it down and we found the two important variables in one part of the argument, which was human rights and investment arbitration. So human rights was very subtle there, and investment arbitration was very vocal there. So we said silent spring of human rights. It is a very word silent spring. It evokes nature's image, it makes it attractive. It also conveys that human rights is not obvious here, but how far it has impacted the outcome of the investment arbitration. For example, I told you try a 3-parent baby and germline therapy. How we looked at it, this title I was giving, made to order baby. So this is the baby which is ordered. It is not the baby which like you use the technology and you make it possible. You express your choice for a baby even if you can't do it in a natural way. Writing the abstract, writing the introduction, these are all parts, So your title to writing the abstract to writing the introduction, mapping the findings. Again, when you go back, you rewrite the introduction. If something is not there, you promised the moon and the moon is only in the mirror, then you say that. And then don't overpromise. You will lose authenticity. And then your recommendation. So reports have to come. So when you edit or proofread, you always check the logical flow. First, you become your own editor. Then you ask your junior teacher or senior teacher to do that. And then improve at least once or twice. And then the citations also, as per the journal, you do that, look at those journals and you do that. And then always your article should be linked to at least one article from the target journal. That is the selling technique. And then sometimes they may ask for article processing charges. If your college is not giving that kind of support to you, and personally, if you can't afford, then you team up with colleges like ours where you can always take a support. I had one very interesting experience which I'm sharing with you. How do you look at title. For example, title can have the word like clashes, down the drain, car trouble, lemons and oranges, all these kinds of, ideas. But then they have to be first, I mean, some of the words, for example, whether cannabis is dress rehearsal for hard drug, is legal regulation necessary? So they see the word dress rehearsal. Parallel universes of Indian law and the global law. See the word unterrible headlines. I mean, node like trusted.com is one source where you can use it. Don't be boring in title, and let the title be search engine friendly. When you search, for example, there is this guy, Cass and Stein, who has got citations more than U.R. Rao, the scientist, most cited author. His titles are all connected to only three concepts: constitution, rule of law, democracy. Tell me which topic is not related to that. So the search engines immediately pick up his article, therefore automatically citation increases. Introducing the article has to be attractive with story, event, incident, or statistics. You said need analysis, literature review, gap analysis, then concepts, theories coming in. Once again, I'm repeating. So if we were to put it in a nutshell, the gateway to good publication: finding a problem, doing your research, creating a test suite, identifying your claim or proposition or statement, introduction, explanation with the background, with the literature review as well, and then giving the legal material, which is legislative and case analysis, connect to broader issues and do the counter analysis as well. Why the opposition side is not true. And then we have this famous checklist for article, which our scientific experts brought out. This I'm going to give to our organizers. So overall, all these challenges are here to stay for future. Now, I would like you to reflect, how do I plan to adopt to such a future as a legal researcher and teacher, collaborating with students as a researcher? One skill which I want to master, one research that I'm planning, either my PhD or my project or my conference paper or my publication, article minimum one publication per year you should target. One curriculum I want to teach differently, means the current curriculum which I'm teaching, how will I teach differently in response to this future to be shaped? One quality parameter I would add to my research: is it going to be interdisciplinary? Is it going to be thematic on one of the emerging 6 trends which I gave in the table, or is it doctrinal? Now, this brings me to the end of the discussion. If you have any response or question to any of these areas, you are welcome to ask. And if anybody is wanting the copy of this presentation, I would ask the organizers, or I will send the circulation version, because I don't want the internal information to be circulated. 8, 9, 10, slide 8 to maybe up to 14 can be removed and sent, because there is financial information. Is that good enough? If there is any question, please ask. Thank you. If you can respond to these bullet points also, 5 bullet points. Over to you. So I can see 4 online participants. Are there offline? Totally, how many participants are there? Hello?
Ma'am, most of the participants are offline itself.
Yeah, totally how many?
They will collect the questions from the hall and the anchor will relay the questions to you.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'll wait for that. I hope it was quite clear, and we will not circulate this PPT. I will give a separate.
Definitely, ma'am.
Removing the private information. Yeah.
Definitely.
Over to you. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
Valued insights in has set food on upcoming steps regarding the perspectives.
I can't hear clearly. Is there a question there? Any other question? I'm sure everything was clear, but can anyone of you answer this question which I'm showing on the last slide? Any one response? You can take the mic and respond, or you can type it up. How do I plan to adopt to such future? One skill I want to master. One research I plan. One curriculum I will teach differently. One quality parameter I would add to my research among these interdisciplinary, thematic, in the emerging trend, or doctrinal. Have you mapped your research to SDG, any of the PhD candidates or master's thesis? Do you plan to do? Or have you published on SDG? SDG means Sustainable Development Goals.
Is there anyone who's willing to volunteer to answer the question, ma'am?
Yeah, this slide. Yeah.
Any volunteer? Any students from the 11th batch? Yes. We have a volunteer here. So how do I plan such projects? Like ma'am answered about particular law, especially the medical field. She pointed out a lot of deficiencies.
Ashwati, can you translate it for me? I can't hear clearly. Any response will be good. Or you can type in the Zoom also, in the chat line.
With respect to the medical field that you pointed out, ma'am, I would like to get into the idea of fraud forensics and other things and how it lacks. One skill that I would like to master is how I can adapt to the present AI and the technology in order to incorporate into my research without actually taking help from it, but not affecting the authenticity of the research. One research that I plan on is how climate change and how infrastructure are related with one another. And one curriculum I would like to teach differently is how, like you pointed out about the three child genes, how and other things. I would like to know and understand how this biology will impact the future and how we can actually look up to that. One
Wonderful.
parameter that I would like to add to my research is I would like to connect everything to SDG, like you pointed out. Plus, also I would like to put it into that climate change into everything because it's a thing that I mean the basic requirements of people are affected with it. It's a very basic requirement. Even human sustenance is impacted with this particular thing. So I would like to add on that to every other plan that I make in the research.
Wonderful. But I would hope that you will publish within next 3 months, or you will keep an article ready for publication within 3 months. So timeline and following it, outcome-based approach is very, very important. Congratulations. Very good response. Yeah.
And
Yeah. So Subramania sir has already indicated it's very difficult because all are in the auditorium and interaction is hard. I request each one of you to keep this as your future goal and what your important takeaway from the learning today and as a kind of stimulation or inspiration for your future course of action. But don't just keep that notebook aside, keep revisiting it every day. Okay, all the best to all of you. And once again, I thank the organizers, particularly being blessed by Dr. Subramania and also supported by Professor Praneshwaran and all the team members who have been with us. Good luck to everybody. And once again, I take this pleasure of being the inaugural speaker, and I hope the whole day session will reconnect very well with the experts that we have on board. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Very inspired and gives our life and it also set a tone ahead for all the upcoming sessions. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome. Good luck with the rest of the procedures. Subramania sir and all of you, please permit me to take leave. Thank you. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.